Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Lauren Izo. And coming up in this edition, a wet weekend here in Israel. Dozens of rescue missions take place as flooding rages across the country. Jonathan Pollard will return to Israel. The former U.S. Navy intelligence officer accused of spying has his parole lifted. An Israeli wins the gold medal at the European Judo Championships in Prague. Over the weekend, another escalation with the Gaza Strip. The IDF striking targets overnight in retaliation for earlier rocket fire from the enclave. Targets included rocket ammunition sites, underground infrastructure, and a military compound. On Saturday, Hamas terrorists fired a rocket toward Israel, which set off alert sirens. Police say the projectile caused damage to a structure near Ashkelon, but no injuries were reported. In a tweet, the IDF saying they held Hamas responsible. It looks like it's going to be a white Hanukkah this year. There isn't much time until the holiday season, and Israel has finally had its first snowfall of the year. Hermon Mountain in the country's north saw its very first winter storm of 2020 as it gets into gear to welcome winter sports enthusiasts. Meanwhile, heavy flooding all over the country this weekend, with emergency services rescuing dozens of people and power outages nationwide. Now joining me is Guy Caspi. He's in charge of Magen David Adom Emergency Services, Intensive Care and Ambulances. Thank you, sir, for joining me.
Thank you for having me here with you.
Well, over the weekend, was the most rain we've had this year so far. There were dozens of rescues, including some extreme flooding in Nes Ziona. Roads were closed in Tel Aviv. How bad was the situation over the weekend? Tell me about some of the situations you encountered personally.
Well, since late night Friday, dozens of calls were received in MDA dispatch centers regarding people trapped in different floods, mainly in the urban setup. But in all actually of those events, the people were rescued by the fire services without any harm. The big incident, or the major incident, took place on Saturday morning in Nes Ziona, where a couple of buildings were actually flooded. And the main issue was that there were some basements that were totally flooded. And there was a big questions about if there are any casualties inside. So we, along with the fire services, were working on site, waiting for them to take care of the incidents, and this incident as well ended with no casualties.
So how does this year compare to previous years so far in terms of the amount of rain? Will this winter be worse than last year?
Well, this is a question you should ask the meteorologist, not me. I can talk about numbers of calls.
So far from what we've seen, from the first storm, compared to the first storm last year, what are we looking at?
I can't really answer this question, but it was a challenge. But in general, when we in Magen David Adom are facing those scenarios, we are getting ready. And that means that we spread our resources, we coordinate with the police and the fire services, and compare, for example, for last year that we have some casualties in one of the floods. In this incident, no casualties at all.
So obviously you've been doing this for a while. You've taken part in a lot of different rescues. I wonder if you can give me an example of sort of a rescue that you were involved with that really stuck with you or moved you, something that you really remember. In
the last years, actually, I was not on the field, but at the operations center. And it's a little bit more complicated when you're not, as we say, boots on the ground, and you receive the information and you hear the radio. And I can recall one of the incidents where there were two people were trapped in an elevator in Tel Aviv last year. And our first responders and ambulances arrived at the scene with the police and the fire services. and they were struggling to rescue them. And unfortunately, at the end, they recover just the bodies.
Right. I think everyone in this country remembers that tragedy. It was a really horrible story. And now I'm wondering, you know, for those people that find themselves stuck in dangerous situations during winter weather, what advice can you give to Israelis who want to stay safe in this weather?
First of all, follow the instructions. The fire services, the police, as well as Magen David Adom are providing information to the general public about how to behave in those scenarios. And if you're stuck in an emergency, if you have a medical emergency, you should dial immediately 101 to Magen David Adom, and the dispatcher will provide you the information and the instruction. If you're just having a situation where you're trapped in water, you should call either the police or the fire services. They will instruct you in the same way.
All right, some very good advice. Guy Cosby, thank you so much for keeping us safe. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Jonathan Pollard, the man accused of spying for Israel from the United States, will finally be allowed to travel to Israel after serving a 30-year sentence in the United States. The Justice Department's Parole Commission deciding to end restrictions on the former Navy intelligence officer just near the end of Donald Trump's term in office. He was released from prison in 2015 and has been on parole, unable to leave his home in New York for 5 years. The Israeli Prime Minister releasing a statement saying he welcomed the decision. According to a new report, Iranian hackers may have impersonated the former head of Israeli military intel. An email purporting to be on behalf of Amos Yadlin was sent from an official email account of the organization he currently chairs, the Institute for National Security Studies. The email, which was sent on November 1st, contained top-secret information that had yet to be published. So how did they get their hands on that information? Let's find out from Ram Levy, the CEO of Confidas cybersecurity company, who helped expose this story. Hey, Ram, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Lauren.
So first of all, take us through exactly what happened. Is it easy to hack the information of such a high-ranking official? And how do you know it may have been Iran?
Well, actually, they did not hack the INSS. They impersonated people working in the INSS, and specifically, they stole a research that we don't know how they put their hands on. And here are the facts. On November 1st, a researcher from an organization called ALMA, which is providing knowledge on what's happening in the Israeli border, receives an email from the assistant of Major General Amos Yadlin. Amos Yadlin was the former head of the IDF intelligence, asking him for his phone number. A day later, he receives a WhatsApp messages from someone that appears to be Amos Yadlin. Apparently, he's not Amos Yadlin. And he's asking him to comment on a research that the INSS is about to publish. And this research was about 1 year for what is called the WhatsApp revolution in Lebanon. The researcher, who did not see the warning signs, and of course he couldn't have seen it because they were so delicately done, answers with his understanding of and the comments to the research, which I must say it's not secret, but it's not something that was published anywhere. And then after he sent it to the email that was given to him by the assistant, or the so-called assistant of Amos Yadlin, then he suspects that something is wrong, and he contacted us since we are providing the NGO with cybersecurity.
So what do you think they were trying to achieve by sending this report that had yet to be published?
Well, in the beginning, we thought that they were trying to get credentials to the organization. This organization has been attacked by various nation-state actors, and we thought that they were trying to get credentials and penetrate the organization's data systems. But after we looked at the logs, we saw that there are no unidentified access to the network. We started asking ourselves who might be behind it. By looking at past attacks of groups, one of the groups called Charming Kitten. Don't be confused by the nice name. Charming Kitten is an Iranian espionage group working on behalf of the Iranian government. We saw a consistent pattern with how they are acting in Israel. They are impersonating high-level individuals and asking for comments from other researchers. And what they're achieving by it is their opinion, which is sometimes published, sometimes not, on issues regarding Israel's national security and internal concerns. So by matching the pattern of this attack and other attacks, we came to the conclusion that it's highly likely that it is the Iranians behind this attack as well.
And if you had not exposed this hack, what is the worst thing that could have happened?
Well, in this case, I wouldn't say it's something that is very, very much worse, because what the researchers sent to them was actually his own opinion about the research. But you know, there are many researchers in the Israeli academia that are connected in one way or another to the military establishment. And that's a very good way to know what their opinion is regarding issues of national security that they would not otherwise publish anywhere. And it's an access to, I would say, semi-military or academic knowledge without investing much effort.
Well, after such, a high-profile figure was hacked, what is the government going to do now to protect from things like this happening again in the future to even higher profile people?
Well, I'll tell you what I think the government should do. The best thing to do in order to reduce the risk from such attacks is by using mechanisms called information sharing. Once you know what the email addresses look like, what their tactics are, what the phone numbers that they're using, it is expected that those, what we call identifiers of compromise, would be disseminated to other research institutes across the nation. Specifically, the National Cybersecurity Directorate, they have a system called CyberNet. This is the information sharing system. And we have shared those indicators of compromise with the system. And it is expected that companies or NGOs or universities that feel that they are under such a threat would take those indicators and put them in their systems. So if they are receiving emails from the specific emails that we've published, they will know that they're not original ones.
Okay, Ram Levy, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you very much.
Well, we're getting close to the end of 2020. Still, the end of the global pandemic is nowhere in sight. Israel is set to ease more lockdown restrictions, including reopening some school grades, but in the meantime is struggling to keep infection rates low and steady, at least until a vaccine becomes approved and available. Nittany Manson reports.
This week, students in 5th and 6th grades are expected to return to class, and Prime Minister Netanyahu says it will definitely go ahead as planned. Also, 11th and 12th graders are to return next week. Israel's health ministry is seeing a spike in serious cases of COVID-19 for the first time in a month and a half. The number of serious cases rose from 304 on Thursday to 318 on Sunday. The number of patients on ventilators increased slightly overnight from 121 on Saturday to 120 on Sunday. The death toll rose to 2,757. The number of hospitalized patients in general also rose over the past week. Nearly half of the new coronavirus cases detected in the past week have come from the Arab sector, the National Security Council says, indicating a 6.5% positivity rate. 9.5% of cases were found in the ultra-Orthodox communities, and 44.5% were found in the general population. Meanwhile, Israel's Hadassah Hospital is in the running to be a regional distributor of Russia's COVID vaccine. The health authorities have already ordered 1.5 million doses of what's been dubbed Sputnik, Hadassah saying that it has representatives in Moscow for the duration of the trial. Also, a senior Palestinian Authority official claiming that Israel has already agreed to transfer millions of vaccine doses to Ramallah for Palestinian medical workers. Still, Israel is expected to receive its order of the Pfizer vaccine this coming January. Nittany Manson, ILTV.
The unrest over the government's handling of the pandemic is still raging. A prominent political activist arrested Saturday during protests against the prime minister. Sadi Ben Shitrit was arrested by an undercover police officer in front of Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem after allegedly asking a pro-Netanyahu activist to leave the protest. As cases have started to rise again, so has the intensity of the protesters who gathered on Saturday in the thousands. Well, a shocking new report alleges humiliating treatment, physical violence, and unlawful arrests in the immigrant and asylum seeker community in Israel. The research by the Hotline for Refugees and Migrants for 2019 is based on dozens of testimonies, accusing the authorities of illegally detaining those suspected of visa violations. They are said to have been detained in facilities like the Yahalom Detention Center at Ben Gurion Airport. In 2019, it held more than 11,000 detainees, including 370 children, in subhuman conditions. Alhaji Fofana is an asylum seeker in Israel, originally from the Ivory Coast, and the CEO of the African Students Union in Israel. And he joins me now. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Of course.
And, yeah, I'm very happy to join this conversation because it's really related to what I've been doing in my community and also what the organization have been doing. But actually, I think this is it has a very negative impact on me as a leader, but I would say mainly to the community as a whole, because the system is built on this. It's built to fail this generation of asylum seekers and also their children. So I'm not surprised, but this might be a surprise to many people because I'm every day immersing into the situation, meeting people, meeting parents and schools. So I know how this has a very huge impact on the community.
Sir, I understand your organization is doing work to help protect the migrant and asylum seeker community. Tell me how reading these testimonies has affected you, and how bad is the problem really?
It affected me negatively because it's something I've been fighting for 5 years, and still there is no success. But I'm still optimistic, and I never give up. And I believe one day the truth will prevail, and these children will have their right to a better education. But also the community, mainly family members, they are very shocked. They are very shocked and disappointed to the type of education that their children are having. So it's not a surprise to me sitting here as a leader, because this is what I've been preaching to my people, but it is a surprise to the entire world to hear such a news in this 21st century.
Well, you know, obviously, 2019 wasn't the first time these incidents took place. It was going on before then. Why is this just being exposed now when it's obviously been going on for some time?
Okay, perfect. As we all know, maybe not too many, but to me, we know that in Israel, when it comes to legal issue, it's always silence until the end result. It's something that they know when there is a right, there is a human right, and they treat it accordingly to the law. But once it's on this side, they keep it mute, and it is a legal issue. They work on it, and it will not expose. It's always silence. Only information they knew that is not relevant, or maybe even the migrant community cannot fight against, then it will be exposed.
So with that being said, now that it has been exposed, do you believe that the Israeli government will take any measures to change the way that this issue is being handled?
Yes, first of all, I will say, even before, they did very little to this situation. But I believe now that it has exposed out, so the leaders, the Israeli leaders, those involved in the lawmaking or the executive, they will be able to involve more and make it already a legal issue and make it a right for the community or the asylum seekers, children, to have this right. Because what have passed has already been passed. But currently we are looking forward to see how this will be able to improve, how they'll be able to invest more time and more effort to make it available into all the cities. Yeah.
I do want to switch gears to a little bit of a different story for just a minute. There was a kindergarten in Petah Tikva that's now allowing asylum seeker children to attend a local kindergarten after a long battle. What kind of a victory is this for those, who are fighting in your community, especially after you were speaking about, children having a hard time being assimilated into the society here?
Well, first of all, this is a big win for me sitting here, and also for those who already fought for this. But I believe there's more to do. I believe there's more to do because this is in only one section, and it took many years to gain this victory. So I will ask them to continue to fight in order for all the other cities in Tel Aviv, in Israel, to have this opportunity, and not only limited to what they've gained now. Because we do believe that the basic knowledge starts from this kindergarten, because there are many children today, even we at the education, to the higher education here, we are struggling with this. We have children that we want to send to higher education, they finish their high school, but it is very challenging for them to meet the criteria because their level is very low.
Right.
And all this is because of the poor basic education they have from the beginning.
Well, we do hope that exposing this report, does lead to some positive changes in your community. Mr. Fofana, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay, moving on now, and let's give a big mazal tov to Israeli judoka Peter Palchik. He won the gold medal in the under 100 kilo category of the final day of the European Judo Championships in Prague over the weekend. He defeated his Russian counterpart, who was last year's winner in the final. The achievement was a personal best for the Israeli judoka, who won bronze at the 2018 European Championships in Tel Aviv. He's also set to take part in the postponed Tokyo Olympics next July. The Israeli president tweeted to show his support, saying, "Our hearts have grown watching you undefeated tonight in Prague." Well, Israeli scientists are usually at the forefront of science and medical research, but this one's a doozy. One professor from Tel Aviv University is claiming he can reverse your age. Professor Shai Efrati, together with a team from Shamir Medical Center, found that when healthy adults over the age of 64 were placed in a pressurized chamber and given pure oxygen for 90 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 3 months, not only was the aging process delayed, it was actually reversed. According to the study, the changes were equivalent to how the participants' bodies were at the cellular level 25 years earlier. And a freak animal accident over the weekend at a crocodile farm in Israel's south. A 4-year-old boy was bitten by a crocodile on his hand and airlifted to Beersheva's Soroka Hospital. Before being taken to Soroka, he received immediate first aid treatment from both MDA and IDF first responders. They declared the injury moderate to severe. Doctors said that the first surgery was successful, though adding that the child still has a bit of a journey to go with more operations ahead of him. Authorities are investigating the event and the park manager, though Israel's Nature and Parks Authority stating that the park manager is experienced and has all the required permits to operate the park legally. Every winter, red-crowned Eurasian birds make a stop at Israel's Hula Lake in the north for a stopover en route from Russia, Finland, and Estonia to Ethiopia. This year, the footage was captured with a drone by the staff at Hula's Nature Reserve. According to one employee, bird migration is like nature's clock.
Migration is like the big clock of Mother Earth, of nature. And you see this clock ticking every year, and it ticks very similar every year. Seasons are coming, birds are coming on the right time. And you also see differences between years.
Okay, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight, another partly cloudy evening with cool lows of about 54 degrees Fahrenheit or 12 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow, you can expect more partly cloudy skies and an average high of 73 degrees Fahrenheit or approximately 22 degrees Celsius. And now, just before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel.
Hello, hola.
Hello, aslama.
Hello, marhaba, salam.
Hello, shalom.
Hello, здравствуйте.
Shalom, bonjour.
That is Magen David Adom paramedics in Israel showing all the languages they know in this very diverse video. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.34 shekels to the American dollar and 2.55 shekels to the Canadian dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Lauren Izzo. Thanks for watching.